Okay, so we're looking today at how to unstick a thermostatic radiator valve. The thermostatic type are the type with the big head like this, usually numbers, possibly not. And what they do is they control themselves. So you set it to a certain temperature, and when it reaches a certain temperature it shuts the valve down, and then when the room cools off it opens up again. Now they all look pretty much the same, or they all work pretty much the same. Let's look quickly at the operation, then I'll show you how you make them work again. In there, that's really difficult to see, in there is basically a little rubber washer, and this pin gets pushed down, and what it does is it pushes the rubber washer up against the seat and closes the valve off. So that's all it is. They've always got a pin like this, never a little turny bit at the top or anything like that, always a pin. It can be a very thin pin, as thin as a needle, or it can be as thick as that one, or possibly even thicker like this one. This one you can actually see easier. I think you can see the little rubber washer in there that pushes down against a seat. Now what happens is you're supposed to leave all these valves open when you shut your central heating off, but most people don't. That's fine. And what happens is the little rubber washer sticks to its seat, and even though you've opened the valve, it doesn't switch on. That's because the little bit here, the little white bit there that pushes down on that pin, is not connected to it. This is just spring loaded, so if it can't spring up, opening this valve isn't going to pull it up. So what happens here is that little white bit, sorry I'm in the wrong place now, that little white bit there, or little cream coloured bit, there's a little wax capsule behind it, and if it's when you open the valve up, it withdraws up into the body, and then when it gets the head itself gets hot enough, that will then push back down to close the valve. So it basically opens and closes and modulates the flow to the radiator. Anyway, okay, so what happens is that little bit of rubber sticks in there and this little pin won't come open. Big problem. So you've got a couple of choices. Now, be aware, on the valves with the very small pins sticking out, about needle size, you can actually pull that right out and discover that it comes right out and water comes out. So be careful. Just give it a little bit of a grip it, give it a little bit of a twist, a little bit of a wiggle, not too hard, it's quite a light thing, and a little bit of a pull, and see if it'll pop open. Do this with the heating on, because the moment it's freed off, you'll actually feel the heat come through. So you actually feel it if you're holding it in your hand like that. So if you're holding it as you work on it, you'll feel the heat come through it. So that's one option, that's one way of doing it. Now in this instance, I don't know if you can see, but that piece of rubber washer is connected directly to this. So if that's stuck down like that, the moment that's come up, flow can come through there. There are some, especially the ones with a very slim rod, where that rod is not actually directly connected to the washer in there. So what that means is the rod can come up, but the washer hasn't come up, so it's still stuck. What you do in that instance is you tap it. So what you do is you get something and you tap the valve. You tap it in the direction of the pipe, you know, the radiator. So don't tap it sideways like that. You're tapping it that way as much as possible. So you're tapping it into the radiator like that. That quite often helps. Also, putting the pin right back down and then just giving it a bit of a tap like that, not too hard, don't need a hammer or anything, just tapping it down. What that does then is it just bangs the rubber washer down on its seat, and that might just free it off, because they're not stuck very hard, they're only stuck a little bit. Some other tricks, twisting it just a little bit if it will. They won't all twist, but just try gently twisting sometimes. The tap, the pull, you know, just a little bit of a pull. The bang on the side, that'll do it. That's pretty much it with those. I mean, you can try banging on the side as well if you want. It does need to be quite a good thump, and that's why one of the reasons for going that way is because then you're not really going to affect it, or you shouldn't affect it too much, because you're not wrenching on the pipe too much. You're pushing it in line with where it's you know, where the pipe is pushed onto. You've got to be quite careful. Bear in mind you can have leaks doing this. Some other things on thermostatic valves. In reality, it's difficult to stop them leaking from here. They usually don't, because they've got O-rings in them, But you see they're not really all that serviceable in there. There's a little baby O-ring, you know, for the shaft. This one, again, there's an O-ring in there, but if they're leaking from there, you've got a problem. Okay, if your thermostatic valve head has stopped working or you've lost one, getting a new one is a pig. But there's an easy trick. If you go down to the plumber's merchant, they're going to say, "What's the head?" And oh, they don't care, they don't want to know. You're not going to be able to buy the head on its own, but if you buy a whole new valve, you can use the head from it. Now, this is a Boss, and most of these valves are fairly similar. And the true trick of this is to go down to the merchants with your head. So you go down to the merchants, he'll tell you we won't sell you a new head for a Boss or a Pegler or something like that. What you do is you take that down, you ask for a couple of valves, you take them out of the box, and you try and fit your head to the body of their valve. And look at that. That is a Pegler Belmont, and that is a Boss. Boss something rub, I don't know. Anyway, that is fitting that nice. And then what you can do is you can just check it, so you can just get it tightened down and just check that your head is sitting nicely. In this instance it isn't, it's sitting nicely on that, and you'll be able to do it. So what you're doing is you're doing it the wrong way round. You're using your broken head or the head of another valve in the house, and you're checking it on the body of a new boxed radiator valve. So that's a good trick to go down, take a valve head down and find what valve it fits, buy one of those, throw that bit away, just use that. The difference is, if you could get one of those, it'd probably be £9, and that's going to cost you, the whole set's going to cost you something like 14. So it's quick, it's easy, it's simple, and it saves loads of arguments at Plumb Centre. What else? If this actually does whip out, so you do end up yanking that right out, as I say, don't, but if you do, you can just pop it back in. It's usually, I forget what make they are, but it's there's one type which got a very slim little pin sticking out, and if you do whip it out, you can just poke it back in again, and it is okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it for thermostatic radiator valves. Don't be surprised that they stick; they quite often do. And sometimes you don't even need to take the top off. You can just turn the valve to open and give them a tap on the side. I hope that helps. As I say, they're not a particularly serviceable item, and they do cause problems, they do stick, and that should get you through most of the problems. Cheers for now.